Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is Ross and this is another review, another James Bond review. This time we're talking about Die Another Day, the fourth and final Pierce Brosnan James Bond film. It's also the 20th overall James Bond movie since the first one, Dr. No, in 1962. And it's also the 40th anniversary, when this film released, of the James Bond film franchise. So it has a lot to live up to, this movie. Does it live up to all that? Well, it's a bit complicated. You see, this movie here is one of those films that when it came out, it was a financial success, making quite a lot at the box office. At the time of release, unadjusted for inflation, it was also the biggest James Bond movie. And it was extremely popular when it came out. I was, I don't even know, 18 years old when this movie released, actually, thinking back on it. 18 years old. I remember watching this movie at the cinemas with my mum. She is, if you've watched a lot of these videos, you would know that my mum was actually the fan in the family of James Bond that got me into James Bond. She would always watch the movies and always enjoys watching any new actor take on or take his opportunity to be James Bond. So when Pierce Brosnan came around, my mum and dad took me and my two brothers to go watch GoldenEye at the cinemas. I don't remember the experience that well. Tomorrow Never Dies came along, we watched that. The World Is Not Enough, I watched that with my friends. And then for this film, it was just a date between me and my mum. My mum went out, got the tickets, surprised me, and then we went and watched it the night of release. And it was a fun time. Obviously, I went with my mum. I enjoyed the time with my mum, eating popcorn. It was a good film at that point, and I had a good time. It was a fun time. Since 2002, this movie took a massive nosedive in enjoyment, in quality for me. I started to pick out all its faults. I started to dislike this and dislike that, the villains, the plot, the script, some of the acting in it, the gadgets, the invisible car, the music, everything. Pretty much every part of this movie I had issues with, major issues with it. But over time, you soften up. And Die Another Day is one of those movies that I've actually softened up a little bit with. It's happened to me actually a few times this year. I was a little bit down on the down in the dirt when it came to The Man with a Golden Gun. And then after a comment, I went back and I re-watched it, and I had a fantastic time watching The Man with a Golden Gun again. And this film here has that same feel for me, where it's very fantastical, very over the top, and it's got a lot to live up to, considering it is, like I said, the 20th Bond film, the 40th anniversary, and we didn't know it at the time, but it was also Pierce's final Bond film. Now, it's not his best Bond film. There are better Pierce Brosnan films. This ranks, for me personally, I'll just come right out and say it, this is his least enjoyable Bond film for me, Pierce Brosnan's. It is nowhere near the quality that we've gotten for his previous three films. The music in this film is a little bit too electronic. I had faults with it when it came to Tomorrow Never Dies, David Arnold. He's a good composer. I just feel like he really does rely a little bit too on the electronic side of the musical score. I liked what he did when it came to The World Is Not Enough. He was a little bit more subdued when it came to the electronic mix. This film here, he really ramps it up. And it's also the case when it comes to the Die Another Day title song by Madonna. I don't like that song. It's one of those James Bond theme songs that whenever it comes on in my playlist, yes, I have a Bond playlist, whenever it comes on, I skip it. I'm not a fan of it. I appreciate it within the context of this film, in that when the title sequence does happen, the theme title sequence, we see Bond's torture for 14 months in North Korea. So it has some use, or else I would skip it, but I do not like the music. I do not like what David Arnold has done with the musical score. But let me get into the film. Let me actually talk about this movie. It's a little bit in two parts. The first half of the movie, highly enjoyable, fun, everything. The second half of the movie can either make or break the whole entire film for some people. And it also does it for me, depending on the mood and when I watch this movie. But the movie actually starts off in North Korea. Bond is surfing with two other agents, and he, lands on the shores of North Korea. He has to sneak in, obviously. He hijacks a helicopter, steals the identity of a guy called Mr. Van Buren. He steals his identity, and this guy here is a diamond smuggler. So Bond arrives at the Colonel Moon's army base. He arrives at this guy's army base, and he hands over these diamonds. As soon as he arrives, you know something's not right. Someone takes a photo of Bond, who is Zhao, which is the henchman to Colonel Moon. Takes a photo of Bond, sends it off to someone. We don't know what he's doing with it, but he sends it off to someone. We later find out that this person is a mole, is a double agent within MI6 that reveals to Colonel Moon and Zhao that Van Buren is not Van Buren, it's actually James Bond. He's an MI6 secret agent, an assassin pretty much. So this whole entire pre-title sequence happens that Bond infiltrates as a diamond smuggler, gets found out, escapes a firing squad, massive explosion goes off, and then Bond chases Colonel Moon on some hovercrafts along the demilitarized zone, which is between North Korea and South Korea. And it's this kilometers worth of space, and it is just landmines, guns, everything. So obviously the hovercrafts can travel over the landmines, and Bond is, using the hovercraft, and he's getting his machine gun and shooting beside. The landmines are going off, exploding. You see these hovercrafts fly out of the way, but he's chasing Colonel Moon, who has also escaped. And as he's chasing him, Bond eventually jumps onto Colonel Moon's hovercraft, and they get into this fight. Bond kicks the hovercraft into high gear. Colonel Moon hits the actual rudder, which, where the big fan is. He hits it. It goes off the edge of the bridge, off a cliff down into a waterfall. Colonel Moon goes down with it because he can't pull himself off this fan, and Bond manages to grab onto a bell, which was above them as they went off. He grabs onto the bell, drops down, looks over the edge, and then all of a sudden, General Moon, who is Colonel Moon's father, General Moon, rocks up, captures Bond. He then spends the next 14 months imprisoned and tortured by North Korean soldiers, and then he's set free, or more, that he's exchanged, prisoner exchange, for Zhao, who was the henchman of Colonel Moon. And we find out that during that 14 months, there was information being leaked from the prison where Bond was the only inmate. And the Americans, the NSA, have told MI6, you need to get this guy out because he's leaking information. There is information coming from that base. Get him out now. So they extract Bond, do the prisoner exchange. M pretty much confronts Bond and says to him, look, there was information coming out of that prison. You were the only one in there. Bond is pleading, saying, hey, it wasn't me. I didn't do anything. I know the deal. If I get caught, you don't give up any information. He eventually escapes, being held captive by MI6, ends up in Shanghai, has a shave, gets a brand new suit, and he's now on the hunt for Zhao because he believes Zhao knows who the double agent is within MI6. Zhao has the information Bond needs. So from Shanghai, he goes to Cuba. He finds out where Zhao is being kept at this island, which does gene therapy, alters your appearance and things like that. And Zhao's actually in the process of having his appearance altered. And when you see him at the start of the film, he's got nice long hair. Well, not long hair, but nice hair, clean shaven. He's a very good looking man. And then during that title sequence, Bond's on his watch, he's planted in the briefcase where the diamonds are, he's planted a little mini C4 charge. And during the firing sequence, when they're about to kill Bond, he actually detonates the C4 and it explodes. The diamonds go flying into Zhao's face, and he's got diamonds embedded all in the side of his face, which is a pretty cool aesthetic. It's a sick look. I actually really like it. I wish he kept his hair, because his hair looks really cool. Later in the movie, he's kind of bald. He looks like an albino. He's very pale skin, but obviously it's because he was in the transfer of having his appearance go from Zhao into this new identity. When Bond arrives in Cuba, though, he meets a woman named Jacinta Jones, who is played by Halle Berry. And Halle Berry in this movie is absolutely horrible. I really have a hard time watching her on screen in this movie. I'm not saying that I'm not a fan of Halle Berry. I absolutely adore her in some movies. She's a fantastic actress. I mean, she did win an Oscar for Best Acting, I think it was in Monsters Ball, that movie. She was really good in that movie, but for some unknown reason in this film here, she plays it over the top.
I take it Mr. Bond's been explaining his Big Bang Theory.
Oh, yeah, I think I got the thrust of it.
I see.
She's insufferable on screen. She does these silly attempts at humor. She tries to be very witty and she just comes across. She's shocking. I don't know why they had her play the role that way and why they allowed her to continue playing it that way. I mean, she hadn't won an Oscar during this movie, I should say. She won the Oscar. So it was not like they were getting her after she'd won the Oscar. And the choices she makes as an actress to play Jinx the way she does is beyond me. I know that they were trying to appeal to a younger generation. I know they were trying to get, I believe the movie Triple X with Vin Diesel was coming out in 2002. I actually think it came out a few months before this movie. And then at the start of 2002, The Bourne Identity came out. And I think the producers were kind of thinking that, oh, Bond's a little bit long in the tooth now. He's getting a bit old. It's an old franchise, 40 years, 20 movies. Now we've got Vin Diesel, who was hot off the movie, Fast and the Furious. He's coming in with a spy movie, and he's meant to be hip and cool with the youngsters. And we've got The Bourne Identity, which proved to be a big success. And maybe they felt like they had to appeal to a very young generation, which is why they've got Madonna, which is why they've got Halle Berry for the sex appeal. But it doesn't work for me. It terribly dates this movie in 2002. And like I said, Halle Berry in this movie, I could have done without her. But you cast another actress in the role, she would have been better. She's almost just a female version of James Bond, and it doesn't work when you just make James Bond a female. It doesn't work. It's all the other actors, Sean Connery, George Lazenby, Roger Moore, Timothy Dalton, Pierce Brosnan, 5 actors. They can do that charming, witty, charismatic, deadly, that funny type of character that Bond is when he wants to be. They can do that and it works. But we can see by this film that it doesn't work when you just make it a female. And they try and do that here. She is sexy. She's beautiful to look at. I mean, when she walks out of the water, which is an homage to Honey Rider from Dr. No, she's gorgeous, absolutely stunning. But she just irritates me every moment she's on screen. She really has these cringy lines. She kind of ruins her scenes in this movie, which is bad because a lot of her scenes are with Pierce Brosnan, and he is always great on screen. He's always charming and witty and sophisticated, and everything that you want from Bond is Pierce Brosnan. He's deadly when he needs to be too. But when she's on screen, it just doesn't work. She's not a great character. Jinx is not a great character. And when you think back during 2002, I remember during the making of this movie, when this movie was being made and they had news articles, and the internet was around back then, and you were on the internet and you were looking up, for spoilers for the movie or set things and interviews and things like that. Producers were heavily pushing Halle Berry and the character of Jinx to be a spin-off franchise. They wanted an entire film franchise based on Jinx. It just doesn't work. And I'm so glad that they chose not to do that, because who knows what could have happened. I mean, I know that they wanted to bring Michelle Yeoh back in The World Is Not Enough, and then apparently they wanted to bring her character back in this film here. And she's a fantastic agent. Brilliant. I absolutely loved Michelle Yeoh in Tomorrow Never Dies. I would have loved to have had her back. But Halle Berry just really does play it over the top, and it doesn't work in this film for me. I'm sure there's others out there that love her in this movie and think that she's a fantastic character and everything, but not for me. It ruins the movie for me. Now, once we meet her and Bond, we eventually find out that she's working for the NSA. She's after Zhao also. Zhao escapes. Bond finds these diamonds that Zhao had with him. And these diamonds eventually lead him back to London to a guy named Gustav Graves, who's played by Toby Stephens. And again, it seems to be a running trend with this movie, over the top. Toby Stephens, great actor. But he plays this role over the top. I was thinking about it. I went for a walk before I filmed this because I really wanted to get my thoughts down, and I was writing a lot of stuff down. And I thought to myself, he really does remind me of Christopher Walken in A View to a Kill. Toby Stephens does, which isn't a bad thing. I liked Christopher Walken. I liked his character, Max Zorin. And I thought the over-the-top, the twisted craziness of him worked for A View to a Kill. In this film, Toby Stephens, his spoiler, not that it's really much of a spoiler, but Toby Stephens is playing Gustav Graves, who is actually Colonel Moon. He's had the gene therapy, it worked, he went through the transformation, and he's now Gustav Graves. And he's a rich, multi-billionaire entrepreneur, and he's using diamonds to create a massive satellite mirror that can harness the sun to put sunshine anywhere across the world 24/7. You never have to worry about anything. You can grow crops during the nights because you can direct the sunlight at the crops and things like that. The true reason he's building this thing, though, is to use it as a space laser, a destructive beam of concussive force that's going to destroy, and we see it later in the movie, he uses it to destroy the demilitarized zone. He just wipes it out completely with the satellite. And that's his whole plan. He's using the diamonds to build this thing, and he eventually interacts with Bond, and Bond doesn't know who he is. And I remember when I watched this at the cinemas, as soon as we find out what Zhao was doing, which was changing his appearance with the gene therapy, as soon as we were introduced to Graves, I instantly said to my mum, that's the Korean leader. That's the Korean guy. And my mum goes, how do you know? And I go, oh, you watch, like that. So to me, it wasn't a twist. And I cannot remember if they were trying to be a twist, but it just wasn't a twist. I remember watching the movie and I'm like, no, this is easily, we know what's going on. But Bond interacts with him, introduces himself. They have this great sword fight. It starts off as fencing and ends with big broadswords, and they're just slashing away. And you can tell they're going real hard on each other. But at the end of it, Graves just starts laughing, writes Bond a check, and then invites him to his ice palace in Iceland, where he's going to demonstrate the space satellite, the diamond satellite, the sunbeam, I guess. And also Bond meets Miranda Frost, who is the assistant to Graves. And Miranda Frost is played by Rosamund Pike. And she is over the top. There's a big trend. She plays the character over the top. If all the characters are at 10, she turns it up to 11, just like everybody else here. And again, spoiler, she is the double agent. She's the mole within MI6. She is leaking the information to Zhao and Colonel Moon, who's now Graves, and she's been sent by MI6 to work with Graves to find out what's going on. But in actual fact, she's a double agent within MI6. And it makes me laugh because it turns out she was the finalist or a number 2 in fencing in the Sydney Olympics back in 2000 or something like that. And Colonel Moon rigged it. They overdosed number 1, so she became the number 1. And we find out that when they were at university together, Miranda Frost and Colonel Moon were there at the same time. They were pretty much students together at this university. And the fact that within the movie they actually mention how we overlooked this info, MI6 overlooked that information. They didn't do any sort of background check on Miranda Frost before they sent her to go work with Gustav Graves and everything like that. And it just stupidity. That's part of the scripting issues of this movie. But she's an interesting character in this film. I picked her twist when she appeared in the movie because she has this brief scene with M just before we go to Iceland. She has this scene with M where M sits her down and says, "You don't fornicate with any of the MI6 agents, even though, you know, there have been attempts by people to sleep with you." And she's very stern and says, "I'm not that type of person. I won't do that." And pretty much tells M, "I'm not going to do that with Bond." And it's this 2-minute scene that is not required in the movie. We don't need to see that. It makes absolutely no point for this movie for that scene between M and Miranda Frost to be there. It feels like it was just there so the audience knows, oh, she's working for MI6. She can't be the double agent. That's how it comes across to me. And this is also the point of the movie where people have major issues with this movie, with Die Another Day, because as soon as you get to Iceland, things go very fantastical. At the beginning of the movie, it's a bit grounded. There are some CGI moments that are a bit, no thank you, but once we get introduced to the invisible Aston Martin, the invisible car, and we go to Iceland and there's this massive ice palace, and then we see the space lasers and everything like that. Then we get Bond windsurfing over the water and everything. That's when things start to go off the rail a bit. Gustav Graves goes from an 11 up to like a 21. He really goes over the top. We find out that, yes, he's Colonel Moon. Bond gets, turned against by Miranda Frost. Jinx is also there. Jinx gets captured. There's an entire sequence. It's enjoyable though. If you can just put aside the silliness of what's happening, it's fun. I know that the car goes invisible, but we've seen the Lotus Esprit turn into a submarine. We've seen in The Man with the Golden Gun a flying car. We've seen volcanoes hollowed out to have bases, rockets that swallow other rockets and land. We've seen these types of things before. And we've always just been like, oh, that's an element of Bond. That's part of the franchise. And I guess here what I'm trying to say is the invisibility of the Aston Martin is a bit much. Maybe it would have been better if it was like an almost Predator effect where it distorts the image of the car instead of just completely having it go invisible. But Iceland has a very, very awesome car chase sequences between Bond in his Aston Martin and Zhao in his Jaguar. I think it's the XKR. The two cars are decked out with gadgets. You know, Zhao's got like missiles, rockets, machine guns. He's got a battering ram at the front, this massive cannon that shoots up at the back and starts pelting Bond's Aston Martin. And Bond's got, you know, auto-targeting shotguns on the front, missiles. He's got an ejector seat. He's got rear-firing rockets. The invisibility. There is so much to like about that sequence, and a few things not to like with the editing, the speed up, slow down. Things like that kind of pull me out of the action a little bit. But it's still enjoyable. Like, that's the thing with this movie, that I know I shouldn't like it. I know I should really dislike a lot of the parts of this movie, but it's also one of those films where when I want to just watch a fun Bond film, just turn my brain off, sit down and enjoy it, I can put this movie on. It is one of those Bond films that I really do just think to myself, oh yeah, that's pretty fun. You know, like it's one of those movies that if I had a party or if I just wanted to do something and I could throw it on in the background without having to pay too much attention to it. There are so many little fun things about this movie that I think make up for the things that I'm not so crash hot about. Like I said, Halle Berry kind of brings this movie down for me. She pulls me out of it. Some of the editing in this movie pulls me out. Like I said, the overuse of slow motion, that's not needed. The overly dramatic moments between Graves or Moon and his father, General Moon, when they're in the cargo plane at the end. I don't like the fact that Graves, to control this big satellite, he's pretty much got the upper half of the Iron Man suit on. It looks like the Nintendo Power Glove on his hand. He's got this massive helmet. It's got electricity that he can shoot. He can control the laser on his wrist. I watch this and I'm like, why is that in the movie? Why couldn't it just be a control? Why does he have to wear this power suit? It honestly feels like they were just, what the kids like nowadays, let's put that in the movie. And I get it, because they were trying to make this a very over-the-top movie, very fantastical. They achieved some of that, but I also feel like Barbara Broccoli, Michael G. Wilson really needed, at this point, not anymore, but they really needed to pull their finger out and really step back and say, if we keep going down this path, we're going to get to the point where we get to what Moonraker did, where we're in outer space, and then we have to go right back down to For Your Eyes Only. And I mean, I guess they did do that because after this movie, we did get the reboot to the franchise with Daniel Craig in Casino Royale. But we should never have gotten to these overly fantastical elements that are in Die Another Day, because GoldenEye was very grounded but fun, adventurous. It was a good action thriller. Tomorrow Never Dies was fantastical, adventurous, funny action thriller again. The World Is Not Enough, a little bit more serious, a little bit more drama focused, but again, an action thriller spy movie. And then this film here just seems to just shift out of the drama, pump up the fantastical, and it's really one of those movies where it's overly popcorn movie, which worked for Bond in the 70s and the 80s, but I feel like as they were starting to go through the Brosnan era, they thought, oh, how can we reward fans for 40 years and 20 films? What should we do? And we got this film. There are so many callbacks, throwbacks, homages to previous Bond films. Some of them are really fun. Some of them work. Some of them don't. Going into Q's lab, which is now John Cleese, because unfortunately Desmond Llewellyn passed away a few weeks after The World Is Not Enough premiered. And I like John Cleese's Q. He plays it more like Desmond Llewellyn did in Goldfinger, where he's kind of more irritated by Bond. He just wants him out and he's done. I don't like the VR sequence in this movie where Bond's got glasses that gives him a training sequence. I feel like it's pointless. Why is it there? It's not needed. We didn't need that. That's a problem with this movie, where it feels like we can't go more than 10 to 15 minutes without some sort of action sequence. It feels like our attention span is gonna waver off if there's not an action sequence. And don't get me wrong, when I watched this movie, the many times I watched it this month, I wasn't pulling out my phone. I was actually concentrating on the movie because I was having a good time. But there are some action moments in this movie where it's like, well, do we really need that? Did we need to go over the top like that? Did we need the VR? Did we need all those lasers when Jinx is laying down on that, trapped bed kind of steel plate, whatever it was? I get it, but did we need it? There are some things in this movie where I'm like, wow, that's really cool. And then there's other moments in this movie where I'm just like, I roll my eyes. And It's also a movie that I can really enjoy if I just don't take it seriously. And I've learned to do that. It's taken 23 years. If you had asked me to review this movie 12 months ago, I wouldn't have felt the same way as I do now. But this has probably been the best year that I've ever had watching the James Bond movies, because I've really taken my time. Like I've said in previous reviews, I watch the James Bond movies every single year. Sometimes I do a rewatch 2 or 3 times of every movie. So that's 25 movies. I can watch them 3 times per year. And then that doesn't include the times when I'll just throw GoldenEye on in the background, or The Living Daylights, or The Spy Who Loved Me. I'll just throw it on randomly. But this is the first time since probably 2011 where I haven't watched all of the movies in the same year, because I've taken my time, because I'm doing the reviews and it's hard for me to work and the house and also do the reviews. I've really had to take my time and slow down. And it's given me the opportunity to watch the movies a little bit more and to just relax, chill out, and just enjoy the films for what they are, which is just fun times. And that's what I'm having with this film. I know people probably came here for me to just rip into it, but I honestly can't, because if someone had told me, oh, do you want to go watch Die Another Day again? I'd probably say, yeah, let's sit down and watch it again. It's a fun film. There are things to like. There are things to dislike about this movie. I've said what I don't like about this movie. Another thing I don't like about this movie is the NSA's involvement in the entire plot of this movie. I think it's Michael Madsen, plays like the NSA. He's like the director of the NSA. I think he's the superior to Jinx's character, who is an NSA agent. He's not required in this movie at all. I thought about it while I was walking, and I'm like, if we took the NSA out of this movie, all the events of this movie could still happen, minus Jinx being an NSA agent. She could be someone that Zhao killed her family members or something, and she's involved out of personal revenge, and she's tracking him down, which I just came up with that right now, and it sounds 100 times better than her involvement in this movie as it is now. So little things like that, I don't mind the gene therapy change of appearance. I find that that's pretty good. The space satellite laser cannon's pretty good. The overuse of CGI, not good. Bond windsurfing, it looked dated when it came out. It looks dated now. And frankly, if they had just stuck with practical effects a lot more and actually had a windsurfing sequence that they could manage to pull off with practical effects, I think it would have looked a lot better, held up, and probably wouldn't have been hated by fans or mentioned by fans all the time. Because we've seen Bond ski, we've seen Bond have car chase sequences. You know, when Casino Royale came out, we saw Bond doing parkour and free running over buildings and stuff like that, and everyone loves those types of things. But the windsurfing, because it's CGI and it looks so fake, it rips you out of the movie completely, and you end up just rolling your eyes and thinking, oh, please don't do this. Why are you going into CGI heavy territory? And you can tell also when they're in the cargo plane and it's flying, when Bond and Jinx are in the helicopter at the end of the movie. The over-reliance on CGI is not something that should be in a Bond film, especially when it's noticeable. But this film here, it really does pull you out with the overuse of CGI. Even at the start of the movie, during the gun barrel sequence, when Pierce, or Bond I should say, turns around and fires the gun at the screen, the Walther at the screen. This time now we see a bullet travel toward the screen. If you were wearing 3D glasses, it might be good, but it quite literally travels toward the screen, and it's like, why? Why did we need that? Was Lee Tamahori, I believe it's pronounced, was he the right choice for this movie? I don't know. I don't think he handled the duties of director well. There are a lot of choices when it comes to actors and their acting that is like, how did you let them get away with that? Some of the editing in this movie, why was that allowed? I know that the producers, Michael G. Wilson and Barbara Broccoli, have a lot more say than probably the directors do. They've got final cut, I know that. They let it happen, which scares me, but it is what it is. It is what it is. Now, that's my takes on Die Another Day. I enjoy it. It's not the greatest. It's not the worst. It probably sits toward the lower end of the Bond films, but it definitely doesn't sit at the bottom of Bond films. It's just a fun film if you want it to be fun. If you take it too seriously, you're not going to enjoy it. And that's unfortunately the way this movie is. Now, I'm going to look down at my phone because I want to grab the stats, which is Bond's kill count. We'll start with that. 10. He takes out Zhao in a really good sequence with the cars where his invisibility in the car manages to kick in at just the right time that he reverses, and Zhao drives off the edge of like this little area, like a staircase area in his car. He drives off as the ice palace is melting, and then Bond pulls out his Walther and shoots the chandelier made of ice and kills Zhao. So he's gone. He also takes out Gustav Graves when Graves is hanging onto the side of the plane and Bond hits his electricity powers and Graves shocks and flies into the engine, the propeller of the plane, the propeller engine. So little good sequences like that. Pierce is really good in this movie, so I do enjoy him like always. Oh, and the other things, I almost put my phone away then. The other things, we've got 7 locations in this movie, which is so much better than the ones we got in The World Is Not Enough. We're in North Korea at the start, then we go to London, Cuba, we've got Shanghai thrown in there, we go to Havana, all these different locations. Iceland, the Ice Palace is beautiful. That entire sequence with the Ice Palace, that is one amazing set piece. Like, I remember looking at behind the scenes and you could actually see them wearing like special things over their shoes because it was so delicate, some of the areas and things like that. So really good. When it comes to ladies bedded, there's 2. James Bond manages to bed Jinx and also Miranda Frost. Now, I have to talk about the love scene with Bond and Jinx because this was a little bit uncomfortable when I was watching it with my mum because it's just like, why do they have to go? Anyway, we're not going to talk about it. I'll probably get flagged by YouTube for some reason, but it's just a very, like, did we need the sequence to go that long? Did we need her to pull out the pocket knife and then eat the fruit and everything? Just why? That's what I'm trying to say. Jinx in this movie is terrible. Just, I don't like her in this movie. I don't like Halle Berry in this film. Jinx was a jinx on this film for me. I just wanted to interject. I'm just recording this after my actual review because I realised that we finished the Pierce Brosnan 4 films that he's done. And I wanted to give my final thoughts on Pierce as James Bond. I feel like it's important I do that because he is the James Bond that got me into James Bond. I mean, GoldenEye on the Nintendo 64 was what made me really seek out James Bond. But GoldenEye, the movie at the cinemas, was the first Bond film I saw at the cinemas. And it really pushed my love of James Bond to the forefront. I remember the first CD that I ever purchased was the Lost Boys soundtrack. The second CD I ever purchased was the James Bond 30th anniversary CD of all the theme songs, and I'll show that on screen if I can. And I used to listen to that on repeat. I knew the theme songs back to back, and I hadn't even watched all the films yet. And they had this little booklet inside, and I used to look at that booklet and think to myself, I love James Bond so much, I need to go out and find these movies. And if you've watched my previous 19 reviews of James Bond, you would know why I love Bond. You would know a little bit of my backstory growing up with James Bond and how I came to adore the movies and watch the movies and things like that. And Pierce for me was so special because it was a time in my life where I was growing up. I mean, GoldenEye came out when I was about 10. And Die Another Day came out when I was 18. And it was just such, well, not 10, I was 11 when GoldenEye came out. I was born in 1984 and that was 1995. But this era of James Bond was so important to me because it was when I was at that age where I would go to the movies with my friends, to the cinemas, and we would talk about movies all the time. We were playing video games, GoldenEye 64 plus Nightfire plus Everything or Nothing. I remember playing Everything or Nothing, the last Pierce Brosnan James Bond game, and I would play it in co-op with my best mate at the time, Besnick, and we were both diehard Bond fans. And this film here was the movie where he and I really bonded over. When this film came out, he and I were like, we realised, oh, you're a Bond fan? I'm a Bond fan. And this was it. This was when, mate, me and this guy here were just like, every day, Bond, 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 Bond. And for me, it was Pierce that got me into Bond, Pierce that made me fall in love with Bond, and he was so important to my growing up with James Bond. And I know previously I have said that George Lazenby was my favourite because it's my favourite, On Her Majesty's Secret Service is my favourite James Bond movie, but Timothy Dalton is my number one. Pierce is just behind. He's my number two. Pierce Brosnan is a wonderful Bond. I know he's taken elements of Sean Connery and Roger Moore, mixed them together and created his own mould of Bond. And he's done it so fantastically that if he had been given another one or two films, he probably would have cemented himself as the definitive James Bond. Unfortunately, he ended his run with Die Another Day, which, when people look back on it, they realise it's not such a good film. Like I said, I've managed to turn that part off and I can just enjoy the film as something fun, and it's enjoyable, and it's really plays up the fantastical, and that's fine. But I just feel like he was wronged when it came to his fifth installment. And it's a shame that he only got the chance to do 4. I know he was in the running back in the day with The Living Daylights, and he lost it, and it went to Timothy Dalton. And then, 8 years later, he came back with GoldenEye and gave us one of the best James Bond movies, if not the best James Bond movie of all time. And I will be having a ranking of my Bond films, but I'm going to do that after No Time to Die. I am going to rewatch all the movies again over a month and then give my definitive 2026, I guess, ranking of the movies. But I just feel like Pierce is the easiest Bond to watch, the easiest to enjoy, and probably the best if someone needs to start off with a Bond. Maybe that's spoiling a little bit about what I think of Daniel Craig, but it is what it is. Now, it's also worth noting that this is Samantha Bond's final appearance as Moneypenny. She was introduced with GoldenEye and she went out with this film here. And she never really got much to do in the grand scheme of things. I enjoyed her in GoldenEye. She wasn't really doing much in Tomorrow Never Dies, The World Is Not Enough Again, and in this film here, she's got this horrible sequence where she puts the VR glasses on and ends up making out with Bond. And it's just like, yeah, okay, it is what it is. Lois Maxwell's the definitive, Moneypenny for me, and that's how it is. But yeah, it's worth pointing that out. John Cleese also gone as Q, but yeah, back to Pierce. Wonderful. He's got four entries in the Bond series. Probably one of the best Bond movies of all time is in there. But I think overall, he does quite well. I think he's got a couple of solid entries behind him. And I think people nowadays can kind of forgive Die Another Day for being over the top. And I know I certainly can. So I hope others can give it a go again. And yeah, we'll leave it at that. Now, as another update, the very first review was Dr. No that I did back in January, I believe. And it was me watching the movies while working out, and I was trying to lose some weight. And I started the movies at one point during, I believe it was I can't even remember when, but at one point I stopped working out, stopped recording myself working out, and I stopped eating healthy, and I lost about, I can't remember how much it was, about 9 kilos for maybe the first 2 months. And then I stopped working out. And then from March until maybe around August, September, I stopped working out. I put that weight back on. And then my wife was on a diet and she said to me, maybe we should do this together. It's better if we're both in it together. We can help each other, motivate each other. And I said, yeah, you're absolutely right. Let's do this together. And 20 minutes before recording this, I have managed to lose 12.1 kilos in 12 months. Now, the impressive thing about that is that I lost about 9 kilos, put that 9 kilos back on, and then lost 12 kilos again. So technically, I've lost more weight, but from my starting weight in January to my ending weight currently, there's 12 kilos lost, 12.1 kilos exactly, which pounds will be up on the screen. Now, what have I done to do that? It's simply eating right. I just try and get my steps up every day. I try and average at least 10,000 steps. And today being a Sunday, I'm not working today, so I decided to go for a walk, which is why I was collecting my thoughts, getting all my thoughts together. But I went for a walk, got my steps up, had something to eat, weighed myself, had a shower, and now I'm recording this. And I'm very proud of myself. I'm very happy with myself. My mental health when I start losing weight is 1,000 times better than when I'm not losing weight. And I am really motivated at the moment because we're in December now. We're like the first week of December. And in the first week of February, which is now 2 months away, my wife and I are going to Disneyland in Anaheim in California. And the aim for me is to lose more weight, obviously, to be more comfortable, to be healthier also. I mean, I'm eating healthy now. I'm eating very healthy now, and I'm eating right, as is my wife. And we're both losing weight at our own pace, and it's working. And I'm just so excited because it was in 2019 when my wife and I got married. We got married at the end of 2019, in October of 2019. And my brother-in-law and sister-in-law, they were married in March of 2019. And I was one of the groomsmen, and my brother-in-law bought me a nice blue suit. And I remember when I wore it that day, there were two things that came to mind. Number one was James Bond, even though he's never worn a blue suit. But number one was James Bond, and number two was the Kingsman, the Secret Service, because we had umbrellas that day because it was starting to drizzle a little bit. And a couple of weeks back, I tried on the blue suit again because I still have it. It's in my closet. And I tried it on, and it was a little bit snug. And I said to my wife, before we go back to America, I want to be able to put that suit on. It's like a little goal for myself to be able to wear it. And we have a wedding at the end of next year, 2026, and I'd like to be able to wear that suit for that wedding. Hopefully I've lost more weight and I can buy another suit, but I'd like to be able, my current aim is to wear that blue suit for that wedding. And I'm getting there. I'm slowly getting there. I'm losing about 0.5 kilo a week at this point, which I think is manageable, and I'm happy with that. I'm not over pushing myself. I'm still eating fantastically, full meals, 3 meals a day. It's wonderful, plus dessert, let me tell you that. But that's how this channel originally started. It was me trying to get fit, trying to get healthy and things like that. And the Bond reviews were also that. I was going to rewatch the Bond movies, work out at the same time, and give a review plus a health update. So I wanted to bring that back because I am doing that again. So the health update is I've lost 12.1 kilos in the 12 months. I'm feeling great headspace-wise. I'm in a new place of work. So I'm out of the previous place of work where I was, which was absolutely horrible on my mental health. I'll talk about it one day, but that's way down the line. But I also just want to thank people for tuning in, people for watching. That always means a lot. Every time I see a view or a comment or a like, it means a lot. So I really do appreciate it. And I always try and do the same thing for people that I enjoy watching. I will subscribe, I will like, I will leave a comment, because I know the struggles of trying to get a channel going and things like that. Now, I know I don't upload as often as a lot of others, and I'm trying to rectify that. But as I said, I'm trying to have that work, personal life, and the YouTube channel. It's tough, it's difficult. I'm sure people can understand, but I'm going to try and make more frequent uploads. That's a promise from me to you. Now, if this is my final upload for 2025, which at this rate, it kind of looking like it is, unless I just do a channel update, thank you. Thank you for 2025. Thank you for all the views. For everyone that's tuned in, I do appreciate it, and the comments. And I just want to say to everyone to have a fantastic time with your family over the holidays coming up, and to just really go into 2026 with integrity and ambition about what you want to do going forward, because you need that in life. Have a goal, set yourself a goal, and just aim for it. Whether it's something financial or a personal goal, just aim for it, get there, and be safe while you're doing it. So to close out, thank you very much. Ross will return in 2026 or even late 2025, but he will return, and thank you very much.
The name's Bond. James Bond.